I genuinely have to ask this question because do I have to warn people that this is now, quote, technically a party political broadcast? Because obviously the budget, let me think when this video comes out. Yeah, the budget will have been out by then. And I don't think Rishi Sunak is going to be a very popular fellow. Like I say, all that fame that he won last summer from implementing the furlough scheme and some of the economic stimulus package to help out businesses, I think is suddenly going to evaporate very, very quickly. And indeed, I think you're going to see him go from being one of the most current popular politicians in the country to probably last place. He's going to have an absolute meteoric fall, I think. So, today's article does come from the Shadow Chancellor, Annalisa Dobbs, and it is talking about Labour's alternative. And I think this is what we need to talk about, Labour's alternative, and how the Conservatives aren't really going to be overall very good, but this is what Labour wants to bring forward. And I said, I am a member of the Labour Party now, so these are the things that I want to talk about and discuss. And even then, when I disagree, and hey, I will ultimately at some points, I'm sure in the future, disagree with Labour policies, I will do my utmost best to try and influence the party in the way that I think maybe we can make these policies better, or implement something that is much, much better than is what they currently have on offer. So, let's jump in, shall we? So, this comes from The Guardian, and obviously this is from Annalisa Dobbs, who's the Shadow Chancellor. And the title is, Rishi Sunak's budget will do nothing to address a decade of economic negligence, which is completely true. And we've talked about this many, many times. Austerity was one of the biggest driving forces for Brexit. Because, as we said before, many people who voted for Brexit voted on the belief that if they voted for Brexit, somehow things would get better, that their lives would be improved in some way. And already it hasn't improved their lives in any single way. And especially now that Brexit is here, we can actually now and start to, quote, track that so-called success. Like I say, there hasn't been any successes in any way, shape or form. So, our country is in the midst of the worst economic crisis of any major economy. The question facing us all is why? Is one of the richest countries in the world, with our brilliant NHS, key workers and scientists, have we suffered so badly? Part of the problem has been the government's appalling economic mismanagement and slow decision-making over the past year. But it runs much deeper than that. The foundations of Britain's economy fundamentally have been weakened over the past decade and have been exposed by the crisis. Everywhere you look, the Conservative approach has proved disastrous. Millions of people have fallen through the gaping holes that the Tories have torn in the social safety net. After a decade of negligence and broken promises on social care, a generation of older people were left exposed to a virus in a system that has become a national disgrace. The tragic consequences were entirely avoidable. But instead of focusing on rebuilding our country, the Chancellor's delays in extending even existing support mean that the conversation around this week's budget is being defined by fiddling around the edges of the existing system. Why is he, yet again, leaving it as late as possible to confirm whether the furlough scheme will last until health restrictions are lifted, when we know that this dither and delay causes redundancies to spike? Why has he not extended business rate holidays and VAT cuts for struggling companies? Why are families still facing cuts to universal credit and council tax rises forced by the Westminster government? These are all problems that should have been sorted months ago. so we could focus on rebuilding our economy instead of families and businesses now must wait for Rishi Sunak to have his moment in the sun at the budget. The Chancellor's approach is also economically illiterate. It's hard to find a serious economist who believes that immediate tax rises would achieve anything other than damaging Britain's recovery. There is a clear long-term case for rises in the corporation tax, as well as action against loopholes, where the Conservatives have made us an international outlier for over a decade. If this really was a sensible plan to raise the rates across this Parliament, Labour would of course look at them carefully, but now is not the time for immediate tax rises. However, that sensible approach does not appear to match the Chancellor's motivations. Instead, he's reportedly been going around telling Conservative MPs that if he puts taxes up now, he can cut them again in time for the next election. Instead of doing what is best for the country, he is doing what he thinks will benefit the party in 2024. After a decade in which the government's agenda is failing on its own terms, missing every single one of the legally binding targets it set itself on debt and the deficit, it is once again focused on trees it cannot see, focused on the trees for it cannot see the wood. Businesses are deeply concerned about the amount of debt that they have taken on over the past year. They're worried about the loan repayments. If they're not investing for the future or taking on new staff, the Chancellor should be ensuring that they can lead our recovery and put us on a path to growth. It is also a similar story when it comes to household finances, where right now the Conservatives are threatening to push ahead with a triple hammer blow of council tax hikes, social security cuts and pay freezes. While the Chancellor is hitting those families in their pockets, he is gambling that our recovery will be built on the back of those people who have managed to save during the crisis and going out and splashing the cash when lockdown ends. But the Bank of England estimates that 95% of those savings will be held onto. That's why Labour has proposed a British recovery bond. This would allow people to keep their money safe and have a stake in the country's future via the National Infrastructure Bank. The Bank of England should play a central role in driving the recovery as part of a broader package. That's why we are calling on the government to bring forward the $300 billion of capital spending into the next 18 months to support the creation of 4,000 new jobs. A Labour budget would hand power to local communities to breathe new life into the struggling town centres and high streets, stopping the Conservatives from selling them off to the highest bidder for this summer onwards. It would create security at work and the opportunity across the country in areas that have been held back for far too long. It would match the ambition of the British people by securing our economy in the short term and rebuilding it in the long term. Beyond the rhetoric, the headlines and the photo opportunities, the Conservatives don't offer anything like this, just a return to the insecure, unequal economy of the past, and that simply will not do. No. So, overall, I 100% agree with what Dodsey, I don't know, we'll call it, yeah, I 100% agree with what she had to say there. I do think that is a very good way to go, to create a sort of national infrastructure bank where we can, invest and everyone can have a share of, helping to build back the future. I do agree that the Bank of England does play a central role in our economy and will build a central role and should have a central role and a major playing part in how we go forward for recovery in the future. Now, the one thing, obviously, because I did say we would criticise Labour when it comes to it, not a single mention of Brexit. Over the past couple of years, there has been a very, very obvious stagnation and slowing of our economy. And there must be an also deeper question asked. Why has our economy taken such a large hit? Because we have taken a far bigger hit than any other country. And that is, I believe, and I think many other economists would also say, that is because of Brexit. Because of the absolute uncertainty that this government and the past government, led by Theresa May, caused by being unable to decide on a Brexit deal. The deal that has been struck will be economically damaging to our country. The only way we can solve our economic problem and is to form a closer union with the European Union by rejoining the single market and the customs union. That is the only way. And then we have to ask that question, if being in those is such an important aspect to our economy, why are we not in the EU? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the fundamental case going forward for rejoining not only the single market and customs union, but also rejoining the EU as well. The writing, unfortunately, is already on the wall. Rejoining the EU is not a fantasy. It is an absolute economic certainty. Even the Conservatives will have to bow to that economic necessity because they, as they often claim, are the party of British business. And there's one thing that British businesses are going to start saying and have already started saying, that this Brexit has been absolutely terrible and has cut them off from a large home market where they used to have regular access to. They don't have access to that now. And as we've said before, trade flows and trade gravity are an observable thing. Just because that we've done Brexit and are going to do this, quote, trade deals with other countries in the world doesn't mean a damn thing. Countries always trade with their closest partners, or closest countries, shall we say. And in this case, that place is the EU. We cannot escape it. It ain't going anywhere anytime soon. And despite how many times Eurosceptics have said the EU is going to fall, it hasn't fallen or disappeared. So, as we've said before, thank you. Thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button on your way out. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.